So this morning is kind of both a playful idea and a very practical idea. And for those who read the email last night, it's, get off the bench. Get off the bench and play. Get off the bench. Life is not to be observed. Life is to be lived. We're not here to just watch what other people are doing, like on the TV. We are here to live. We are here to live, and we are here to fulfill a divine purpose. So rather than sitting around watching others do it, rather than sitting around reading about others doing it, rather than talking about others doing it or singing about others doing it, we need to get off the bench. We need to get off the bench and play. We need to get in the game, because it is in the game that we learn the game. It is in the doing that we are learning. So the example I gave in the email last night, I'll repeat it here for those who hadn't seen it. But when our kids were growing up, of course they're all adults now, but when our kids were growing up, they participated in many different team sports. Lori and I used to not see each other sometimes until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, as she would take some of the kids and I would take some of the kids, and we would pass each other on the roads through town going to different recreational centers and ball fields. But one coach that our oldest boy had in Little League, he stands out in my mind. Of all of the coaches, of all of the teams that all of the kids had, this is, I think, the only fellow that I remember. And there's a reason that he stands out. Now, at that time, according to the league rules, any kid that showed up to play, any kid on the team that was on the roster, and they showed up for the game, they were suited up to play, and the coaches had to put them into the game for at least 2 innings. That was the league requirement. At least 2 innings they had to play in the game. Now, these kids would go to practice several times during the week. They were committed. They had invested the time. Their parents had shuffled them back and forth to practices, and they showed up for the game, and the minimum requirement was that they got to play for 2 innings. So what most of the coaches did, now most of the coaches, they wanted to win. That was their objective. They wanted to win that game. They were going to try to figure out how to do whatever they could do with the players that they had in order to win the game. So what they did was they didn't play the kids who were still developing, the kids that weren't playing so well, Now other kids would come on the team and they might have played before, or they might have had practice elsewhere, or their dads might have been able to teach them something that they didn't learn on the team. They played well. And most of the coaches, what they would do is that was their starting team. They would put the best kids they had out on the field to start the game. And their strategy, if you want to call it that, was run the score up until they had a comfortable lead, and then start to substitute in the other kids, but one at a time. Not put all the second stringers in at once, but kind of put them in one at a time, so the other 8 kids could hopefully cover for the mistakes that the new player was going to make, and in that manner they would win the game. And the result of that was these other kids, they only got to play 2 innings. That was it. And they were very disheartened, because they knew that they were bench warmers. They knew that they were just going to have to sit there until the coach either had a comfortable lead or had no other choice but to put them into the game. That was it, And you could see the sadness on some of the kids' faces. You could see them just kind of sitting there dejected, waiting for their turn. But they went to practice and they showed up. Now, this coach that I'm telling you about, this coach that I remember, he didn't do that. He rotated kids in and out. It didn't matter whether they were the best kids or the worst kids on the team. He put them in. He put them in different positions so they could learn different positions. And he didn't always win. He didn't always win the game. So one night after they lost a close game, one of the parents was kind of complaining to him, saying, why didn't you play the best kids more. If you played the best kids more, you might have won that game. And he said, well, he says, let me tell you something. He said, the other coaches think that they're here to win ball games. He said, I think I'm here to teach young boys how to play the sport. He says, and the only way they're ever going to really learn how to play the sport is to get on the field and play. Practice is one thing. In practice, you can try out different things. You can rehearse different things. You can get better at certain things. But in the game, it's for real. And they need to have that experience. And he said, besides, it doesn't make any difference how many games we win or lose during the season. The way that the league is set up is that come the end of the season, which is usually around September, he says, every team in the league is seeded into the tournament. It was a double elimination tournament. He says, so it doesn't matter if we lose every game during the season, we're still going to get to the tournament. He says, now what's going to happen is all of these other coaches that are only playing their best kids, when they get to the tournament, a lot of their best kids are going to be gone. They're going to be gone to the beach for the end of summer vacation. They're going to be gone to another sport. They're going to be gone. And those coaches are going to be left with the kids who showed up all year but hardly got to play the game, and they're just not going to have the skills necessary to win a tournament. He says, when we get to the tournament, he says, every boy on my team will know how to play. He says, if my star players don't show up, it doesn't matter. Every boy on my team will know how to play. Now, he didn't always win tournaments, but he always developed young boys who understood and knew how to play the game. And I admire that. I really admire that about him, and I think that's why he stands out in my mind. What is important in life? What is really important in life? What are we here for? And are we doing it? See, the best way to learn it is to do it. We have to have some theory, we have to have some practice, but then we have to apply. We have to apply what we have learned, and we have to keep applying what we have learned until it becomes second nature to us. Now, Florence Scovel Shinn, in her book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, which is an excellent little book, probably available in public domain now because she lived so long ago, she says life is like a game of boomerangs. Life is like a game of boomerangs. What we toss out, we're going to get back. But this idea of life as joyful, as playful, as a game, as opposed to life as a drudgery to be endured until we die. This idea of life as a game, and in playing the game, we learn how to get better at it. We learn how it works. We learn how we work. See? Then it becomes fun. See, the kids on that coach that played everybody, his kids weren't dejected sitting on the bench. His kids knew they were going to get in the game. They knew they were going to have fun. They knew they were going to play. They knew they might make mistakes, but that was part of learning. See? And they looked forward to it with joy. Kids on the other teams, they would get out there and they would make a mistake, and everybody would put on their sad face, and it just wasn't fun. So what we want to come back and look at then is, what does this have to do with our spiritual growth? What is Little League Baseball and coaches from 40 years ago? What does that have to do with our spiritual growth? And the point is this, see, spiritual growth, life, is not a spectator sport. We're not supposed to sit on the bench and watch other people do it. We have to get into the game. Now, the kids in Little League, they were on the bench because the adults were making them stay there. They didn't have a choice. They couldn't just run out onto the field. But we are not constrained like that. We can get out and play anytime we want. And if we're already out playing, we can play more. We can play harder. We can We can deliberately practice some aspect of the game, you know. But that choice is ours. That choice is ours. It is up to us. So there's just a few simple things that we really want to think about. Life can be very confusing and it can be very complex, and at times it can be overwhelming because there's just so much going on, you know, so many things going on. There's so much to do. There's so much in the news. There's bills to pay. There's all of these different things. But one way that we can simplify it is by focusing on what is important. What is the most important thing right now? Right now, are we doing the most important thing right now? Now this kind of brings us down to the questions that we've been rolling over for the last several weeks. So, well, what is important? What is this thing called life? What is it all about? What is it that we're here for? Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? So one thing that we want to come to understand, this goes back to mindfulness meditation, mindfulness training, is to be present now, to be present right here, to be present right now. All of your life, all of my life, all of our life takes place in our consciousness. In our consciousness. And our consciousness is only active in the moment. Only now. Where is the past? There is no past. There is no past unless we bring it into our consciousness now. And when we're not thinking about the past, where is the past? It doesn't exist for us. It doesn't exist. See, it's gone. It's gone. Whatever happened 100 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or a year ago, or a few seconds ago, whatever it is, it's gone. It's gone. Yet we can bring it into our consciousness now, and we can hold on to it. We can keep rolling it over and over and over. You know, we may have some pleasant memories, some fun times, some enjoyable things, and that's all good. And we may have some regrets from the past. And either way, we can keep holding on and holding on and holding on to that which is no longer. So one of the things that we want to consider then is, are we cluttering up our consciousness? Are we cluttering up our experience of the now by holding on to things that are not real? That are not real. So just as we can intellectually see, we can understand that. You know, I can tell you, well, yesterday's gone. You know, the past is gone. You can say, But did I ever tell you about the time? I said, well, it doesn't matter. The past is gone. You say, But you know. So what we want to do is to recognize that we, as self-conscious, self-aware, thinking beings, we can keep the past alive when the past really isn't alive. The only aliveness it has, the only life it has, is that which we give it through the power of our thoughts, through that which we allow to occupy our field of awareness. Now, in a similar fashion, where is the future? Well, you say, well, the future's ahead of us. Excuse me, the future is out there. Well, it's not here. It's out there. Somewhere out there, you know. But we can think about it. See, we can bring the future into the now by what we think. We can make plans, we can imagine, we can daydream, we can think about that vacation that we're going to take, the beautiful places we're going to go, the cruise ship we're going to be on, all of those things, and we can actually sit and lose track. We can lose track of the now, in our daydreams. But where are they taking place? They're taking place in our field of awareness, in our conscious awareness, right now. So the first thing that we want to consider in learning how to play the game of life, right? So the Buddhists have a beautiful saying. We don't know who started the game. The game was in progress when we joined. We just arrived in consciousness. Our consciousness came into awareness, and the game was in progress. And we've all been just trying to figure out how to play. How to play. Can you imagine what it would be like if, as a child, you were relocated, your parents relocated to another country where you didn't speak the language and you didn't know the local games, and you went out into the playground, and there was a bunch of kids there playing. They're doing something with a ball, and they just invited you to come and join, but you didn't speak the language. You don't speak the language. You don't know what they're doing. The game is strange to you, and the whole time you would be there, and you would be trying to figure out, what is this? What are these rules? How do I play this game? And that's what life is like in the Buddhist analogy. That's what life is like. We're here. There's something going on. We're here, and we're trying to figure out, are there any rules here? How does this thing work? Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? So the first thing that I invite you to consider is the only moment we have is the now. That's the only moment we have. We can't do anything about the past because the past really doesn't exist any longer. We can't do anything about the future in terms of living it now because it's not here yet. It's not here yet. So we want to, in learning how to play the game, recognize then to bring our consciousness into the now. Pure consciousness, aware of itself, into the now. In some of the Zen arts, the purpose of the practice is to have the practitioner get their mind out of the way and just simply be one with the art. Be one with the activity, without thought. So in one of the Zen arts, they practice with swords, and the idea is that if one person has to think about what is my opponent doing, and how shall I counter that, and what might they do next, and oh look, here comes the sword. It's coming at me this way, right? Not a fatal fight, but a practice fight. It's coming at me this way, and therefore I need to counter that way. If there is a conscious thought process involved, it's too slow. It's too slow. They have to get mind out of the way and be one with the opponent, be one with the sport, be one with what is going on, to dissolve the barrier separation that we've been talking about. And then it's as if the sword moves by itself. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about here. Is we don't want to clutter up our consciousness holding on to things that are not real. So along that line, the first thing that we realize is not real is time in terms of past or future. The only real time is the now. So in learning to play the game, in learning to practice so that when we get into the daily game, when we get into life on a daily basis, we want to learn to stay in the now. See, and I think that's an important point. In our society, in our culture, we think we want to do something different. And we say, well, I'm going to need to take time to practice that. You know? And I'm going to spend time practicing that. I need to get in shape, so I'm going to have to find time to get to the gym. And we create a barrier of time. We create a barrier that says, well, when I get time to do that, when I find a way to create time to do that, then I can practice that. And then after I've practiced it for a while, then maybe I can start to apply it. Maybe I can start to apply it in my daily life. And what we want to consider today is that our daily life is the game. Our daily life is our practice. Our practice is our life, and our life is our practice. In the example I use of going to the gym, we're busy all day long. We're up and about all day long. You know, every time we walk down the hall to get something, we can walk in a different way. We can do our lunges. We can carry something with us. You know, there's so many different things that we can do just as we're going through life to increase our level of activity and increase our level of fitness, that this idea that, well, I have to take 2 hours to go over here or go over there and do something, it's probably not true. Now, it may be helpful, and certainly when we can, we go and do that. But if we can't, we have to think of other ways that I can incorporate this activity into my daily life. When you're learning a new skill, for example, when you're learning how to do anything new, any new skill, it takes a lot of conscious effort to think about everything that you're doing. You know, I'll never forget my first driving lesson when I was a kid in New York City. You know, my first driving lesson was in New York City traffic. And the driving instructor said, "Okay, put your blinker on and pull out." And I didn't pull out. And he says, "What are you waiting for?" I said, "I'm waiting for a break." He says, "You're never going to get a break. This is New York. Pull out." So sure enough, I just pulled out and somebody hit their brakes and created a space, and I got out. But I had to be consciously aware of everything that I was doing. Right? What was going on with the traffic signals? What was going on in the mirrors? What was going on with the pedestrians? What was going on all around? You know, how fast was the car going? What was the speed limit? And mind was just cluttered and cluttered and cluttered. And that's the way we learn. And then after a while, it just became second nature. It became an unconscious skill. And then from then on, we go through life, or I went through life in driving. You don't think about those things anymore, you know. They're just there, and part of you is paying attention, I guess. You ever been driving down the highway after a long trip, and all of a sudden you look at the sign and you say, "Oh my goodness, you know, I just went 50 miles and I don't quite remember it. Don't remember past anything." Something was driving that car. It was taking place at a subliminal level, a level below our conscious awareness. So what we have learned to do as we found ourselves thrust into this game of life, what we have learned to do, we are now doing at a level below our conscious awareness, at a subliminal level. So one of the ways that we learn how to change what we're doing, the model is moving from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. So we have to first become aware of what we're doing. We have to become, what the model says is we must become consciously incompetent. That means we must be aware of the fact that we're doing it, we're doing it incompetently. we must become aware of our bad habits if we wish to break them. You know, if in learning how to drive, for example, maybe we're doing something that we ought not to do. Maybe we're speeding, for example. Somehow we have to become aware of the fact that we're doing that. You know, of course, nowadays it's easy. You put an app on your phone and it'll tell you, you know, slow down. But we have to become aware. We have to become aware. And then once we are aware, then we can correct what we're doing. And we can say, well, I don't want to do it that way. This is the way I want to do it. See, we become consciously competent. We start off consciously incompetent, unconsciously incompetent. Then we become consciously incompetent. And then we become consciously competent. Now I'm doing it the right way, but I'm doing it with a lot of attention. And then after it becomes second nature to me, now I am unconsciously competent. Okay? Are you aware of what is going on in your field of consciousness? Are you aware of the present? Are you mindful? You know, if not, you know, there are excellent resources for mindfulness meditation. Can we be here now? Can we be in the present now? So can I catch myself when I am holding on to things that are not real? Am I holding on to the past? Am I dwelling in the past? Am I holding on to a dream of the future or a worry of the future? And it's preventing me from being here in the now, because here in the now is the only time that I can make any deliberate change in my life. I can only play the game here and now, you know. Remember one of my friends was going through the beginning Science of Mind classes. We were going through them together, and he went back home to a high school reunion, and he came back and he was dejected, you know. And he said, I left that place 25 years ago. He says, and when I went back, he says, all my buddies were sitting on the same stool in the same bar talking about the same football game that they played when they were 16 years old. They hadn't changed. You know, he became aware from his point of view that they were stuck in the past. Can we become aware of when we are stuck in the past? Can we become aware of when we are not here now? And can we then bring ourselves consciously competent? Can we bring ourselves to, but what do I want to have happen now? What do I want to have happen now? Most powerful question I know. The other thing that we hold on to is this idea that we need to chase every random thing that takes place in our life. I was reading something very, very insightful by a Zen teacher this morning. And he says, if you think about it, he says, almost everything in life is random in nature. Almost everything. And we apply a great importance to it, and yet it's just a random event. A random event. What we need to do is stop worrying about random events and start bringing ourselves to, but what is real? What is the reality that is common through these random events? You know, and I had to think about that. You know, why were you born when you were born? Why were you born where you were born? Why were you born to the parents you were born to? It's all pretty random, pretty random. And yet we place such importance on the random events. And then through our life, what happens is random thoughts come into our field of awareness. And we start to chase them. We start to engage them. Right? Osho says it's like our mind is chasing a wandering dog. Or, I'm sorry, let me put it back. He says, our mind is like a wandering dog and we chase it. We chase it. Can we become aware of when we are just giving our time and our attention to something that absolutely doesn't matter? Absolutely takes us out of the game, takes us away from what is important. So what is important? What is important? What is it that we are trying to learn? What is it that we are trying to experience? So this first idea then that the Zen teacher was talking about is we are all part of this randomness. We are all part of the same life. And we believe that somehow we are separated from one another. I've been talking about this for the last several weeks. We believe in the separateness, right? And Dr. Holmes tells us all of our problems come from this idea of separation. In the Judeo-Christian Bible, in the book of Genesis, it starts off with, where do our problems come from? They come from separation. They come from separation. In theology, there's a question that theologians, and I suppose in philosophy as well, called the problem of evil. Problem of evil. If God is so good, why do we have all of this trouble in the world? Why do we have all of this trouble in our lives? And to me, it's a very interesting question, because if you listen sincerely, not trying to correct another person's point of view, but if you listen sincerely to their explanation, you learn more about their religion than if you read a dozen textbooks. Because that understanding then of where evil comes from, the problem of evil, it establishes the whole worldview. All of our problems stem from this idea of separation. And if we go beyond that as a problem, what we were discussing for the last week or so is that this experience of separation that we have is a temporary experience, one that we are uniquely, individually, uniquely overcoming. We're kind of remembering our way back home. As Goldsmith says, we are awakening from the Adam dream. We are remembering our way back home. So the undifferentiated spirit has come to animate this very life that we are, and in so doing to discover its own magnificent life in some unique way through us and as us. The reason I say that is I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that the only reason that we want to overcome the ideas of separation is to do away with problems. And life is more than a problem to be solved. Life is an experience of unity, to behold, to experience our oneness with each other, with nature, with every aspect of God. That is the end of the game, if you want to, or the end game, if you want to call it that. That is what we're learning to do. Now, Florence Scovel Shinn said, life's a game of boomerangs. What you toss out, you get back. We would recognize that as the law of mind. And it's done unto you according to your belief. And a lot of what goes on in our practice is deliberately choosing our beliefs. Deliberately choosing. Everything is an idea. We have to remember that. Everything is an idea. The past is an idea. The future is an idea. Ideas come into our field of consciousness. The importance that we give to particular ideas, that in itself is an idea. My country is the best country, that's an idea. My political party is the best political party, that's an idea. My religion is the best religion, that is an idea. And you and I, the one thing that we can do is we can choose our beliefs. We have will and we have volition. We can become aware of what we are thinking, and then we can say to ourselves, do I really want to believe that? Is that really how I want to live my life? Do I want to live from a place of fear? Do I want to live from a place of lack, or do I want to recognize my connection with all that there is? The omnipotence, the omniscience is omnipresent as me. Do I wish to surrender the ego that believes in separation to the ego that is the sense of identity, that only knows unity, that only knows oneness? So the first thing we can do is we can catch ourselves, we can become aware of ourselves in our daily activity, in the game. We can become aware of ourselves. What are we holding on to that is not real, that is no longer important? And can we replace that? Can we replace that wasted time, that wasted energy, that wasted consciousness? Can we replace that with what do we want to have happen now? Now. William James sometimes is referred to as the father of American psychology. And William James went to Edinburgh, Scotland in, I think it was 1898, somewhere right around there, give or take a couple years. And they had metaphysical lectures in Scotland. And James was invited there to give a series of talks. And the topic that he chose was called The Varieties of Religious Experience. The Varieties of Religious Experience. And it's a book that's very thick, must be like 1,200 pages, I don't know, it's pretty thick. But it's worth reading. It's worth reading. And he started off with the observation. He said, if you look at humanity, there's pretty much, he put it into a binary decision. He said there's two main groups that make up religious adherents, people who believe that they're religious or would say that they are religious. And he says one group, one group is he called them the negative-minded pessimists, and then the other group he called the healthy-minded optimists. And of course, he believed he was in the healthy-minded optimist. His parents, by the way, were in the New Thought movement at that time. I think the Dressers, coming down from Quimby to the Dressers, and then his parents, but that's just kind of neither here nor there. But James said there's two basic orientations towards life. There's the negative-minded pessimist, and then there's the healthy-minded optimist. And he says each goes through a stage of awakening, of a religious awakening of some nature. To the negative-minded pessimist, that awakening is a sense of relief. They become aware of the fact that they are spiritual in nature. They become aware of the fact that through their religion, pain and suffering will come to an end, and they're very happy about that. He says the healthy-minded optimist, on the other hand, they become aware that they are spiritual in nature, and they become aware then that the universe is basically for them and not against them, and that they can, by exploring their spiritual nature, they can produce different experiences in their lives. Those are the two aha moments. And what was interesting to me was what he said next. He said, and then after that, nothing changes. After that, nothing changes. For either the pessimist or the optimist, nothing changes other than they feel differently. They feel better about life. To me, what that means is they're sitting on the bench. They're sitting on the bench. I want you to think about this. Religions of the world are almost entirely based on a belief in somebody else's spiritual experience. Okay? Somebody else had some sort of a mystical experience, the experience of the presence of God, something that was a transcendental experience, something that was beyond time and space, something that just had a profound impact on them. And that became the beginning of a new religion. Then after that, what happens is it's almost as if that religion becomes a spectator sport. That is, we are all sitting on the bench kind of looking at this founder's experience. Spirituality is about having our own experience. Spirituality and spiritual practice is about getting off the bench. I don't want to sit on the bench and listen to other people tell me about somebody else's experience. That may be good, it may be good in a form of practice, right? So it's like at the ball field when they tell you this is the way Sandy Koufax would throw the ball. This is the way to grip it. This is the way to deliver it. There's a place for that, but we have to get out onto the field and practice. So we can't just spend our lives sitting on the bench reading about somebody else's experience, no matter how profound it was. I mean, I love Rumi's poetry. I absolutely love Rumi's poetry. When he says, beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, I will meet you there. It touches my heart. But it's not enough just to read Rumi's poetry. What I have to do is I have to move beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. I have to bring my consciousness to that field. The only place I can do that is in the now. The only way I can do that is to get off the bench. Reading Rumi's poetry all day long is good. But moving to that field is better. Moving to that field is better. So what I invite you to consider today, and hopefully to implement in your lives today, is that tomorrow morning you're going to get up and go to work. Most of us. Or go do something. Most of us. And whatever that is, let that be your practice. Let that be your practice. Certainly start your day with prayer and meditation. Certainly. Set your intention for the day. Today I am a beautiful expression of God's love. Today I let divine love flow through me freely and easily. Today I live the best life that I can live because I let the best life that there is flow through me. But then as you go out, if you find your mind getting entangled with all kinds of other things, bring yourself back to the now. In this moment, right here and right now, all of life is connected. The people who are driving aggressively and cutting me off in traffic, they're all suffering because life is suffering. And I will not join their suffering with my anger. I will just drive more carefully. During the day, as my mind starts to wander and I get entangled in the politics of the radio or the sports on the radio or whatever's going on, I bring myself back to the here and now and I say, is that what's really important? Is that what's really important? What do I want to have happen now? How does any of that help me to experience more fully my unity with all life? Everything else in life turns to dust. The money that we store up, our jobs, the companies we worked for, the houses that we live in, the bodies that we experience this world through, it all turns to dust. It all turns to dust. But what remains is conscious awareness. Pure consciousness, aware of itself. The game that we are playing is to learn how to move away from all of the unimportant distractions of life and be that consciousness now. Be here now. Get off the bench. Get in the game. Be here now. And so it is.